So we did a couple polls this week, mostly about DC parents, basically.
Yeah.
So the first one was, who is your favorite Martha?
I mean, admittedly, this was never going to be the best poll. Slightly skewed. The fact that all I can think about when it comes to Martha Wayne is her pearls all over the ground and her dead body just lying there. That's basically all I know about Martha Wayne. It's probably the same for a lot of people who got involved in this poll, and so it's no surprise that it was kind of a 2/3, 1/3-ish.
Yeah.
What are the numbers down there?
69%
Yeah.
for Martha Kent.
I think Martha Wayne did very well to get 31%, to be honest.
Yeah, I think she probably just earned that for like the huge Batman fanatics who are like, yeah, you know, Martha Wayne. Because I mean, we don't really know anything about the Waynes.
Nothing at all. It
like,
was just Martha versus Martha, and a couple of people posted the gif of, why did you say that name?
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, and Aunt May got an honorable mention as well.
Of course,
because there's always one. The second one was about the best DC dad. So our choices were Thomas Wayne, Jonathan Kent, Alfred, and Jor-El.
How many votes did this one get?
This one got 137 votes.
This got to about 80 votes. Thomas Wayne and Jor-El still had 0 votes.
People
each.
were like really, really passionate about this. I was
Yeah.
reading the comments, and like some people were just like ripping apart Thomas Wayne and some of the other dads, and I was kind of shocked at like how invested people are in which dad is the best.
Yeah, and with a resounding victory, it was Alfred.
Which I found interesting. I mean, I voted for Alfred,
Yeah.
but I did find it interesting because I was thinking, you know, they all sort of. I mean, with the exception of Thomas Wayne, because again, you have like the Martha Wayne problem where we don't really know.
The only reason I put him in there was because of Flashpoint, because the whole Thomas Wayne story comes in during Flashpoint. So I thought some people may have latched onto that as their imprint. They may have enjoyed that, but no, not really.
Yeah, it's like,
Thomas Wayne was at 2% and Jor-El
2%, and Jor-El got 1%, which
Jor-El got
was kind of
1%.
surprising. I mean, the guy sent his child off into the unknown to save him. I mean, that's a pretty monumental dad moment.
Yeah.
But no credit there for Jor-El.
No, Jonathan Kent, second place. But yeah, Alfred. People like the whole paternal figure that he became. A lot of people thought he may have had a thing with Martha Wayne.
Yeah, that I noticed
secretly
that came
be his
up.
actual father.
Anyway, so hello and welcome to the Geekly. I'm Lex.
I am Jules.
And we have some very exciting news. We got our 4th patron, Richard Cardenas. Hello and welcome to the fam. We're very happy to have you.
4 patrons. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big
it's
moment.
So exciting. Like,
Yeah.
I love it when I get the little email who's like, meet your new patron. It's really cool.
Yeah, so thank you for your patronage. Okay, so let's start with Swamp Thing. I kind of was hoping that we'd finally got away from expositional conversations that were kind of pointless. In the last couple of weeks we've had some character development, we've had some darker scenes, but that's all this episode really was. It was a lot of expositional conversations that amounted to several different factions in a bit of an arms race to weaponize or monetize Alec Holland's new form Swamp Thing. That was kind of it. It was talk at the CDC with her and I can't remember the mystery guy who was at dinner last week, her talking to Harlan about Alec, Avery talking to Alec about what he could do, Avery talking to Woodrow about what they could do with him, and that was it. Lots of expositional conversations, and then a bit of a confrontation at the end where he was subdued with a Mr. Freeze-esque ice gun, and that was it. And is this horror? No, it's departed in all ways from what we liked about it in the beginning, really.
It started off so promising, but like this episode was very much various characters all having the same conversation, and we weren't given anything new. It's like
she was telling Harlan what we've learned in the last 2 episodes. Like he can see the future this way. He can cure people this way. He can grow fruit this way.
Yeah,
we've seen that.
We know that stuff already. She's had that conversation with other people. We've seen evidence of that stuff already. It's kind of like the writers feel like we need to have our hand held through every step of this, and they need to walk us very carefully through each little step to get to the next point, and we don't really. I'm just kind of thinking of how the similar situation was handled in Dark in season 2. The secret starts to come out about the time travel and everything, but instead of everybody relating the whole thing, we just get the characters together, and then there's a time jump, and we presume that character has been filled in on everything we know before, and I think that would have been a much more effective way to deal with that in Swamp Thing, particularly considering we only have 2 episodes left, and this did not feel like
the jigsaw pieces coming together for the end game.
A certain amount of momentum should be happening right now, and I mean, perhaps if they'd started off the episode with Alec being captured by Avery, that would have given it a bit more momentum, but I don't see how in the next 2 episodes they're really going to ramp it up enough to give a satisfying end to the season. Maybe that's because they truncated the season and they didn't adjust well enough. maybe not, but it does not feel like we are coming up on the penultimate episode of the season.
I mean, that's it really, isn't it? I don't know what else there needs to be said. I enjoyed Woodrow in this episode a little bit more than I've enjoyed him previously. I liked that he had this brief conversation with Alec, and we got the balance of Alec the intellectual and Alec the beast, literally in the course of about 3 minutes, where he was talking about these medical journals that Dr. Woodrow was writing in, and then we got him beating the holy hell out of a load of people at the end. It was just something I noticed in this episode, that they've got that balance really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Nothing else needs to be said, really.
Let's talk a little bit about Krypton this week. We thought we were going to have a mid-season break. We didn't actually have one. What did you think of Val blowing up the space elevator? Is that in character?
I would say not in character. He had this very brief conversation with Jax where she was like, I do the dirty job so that your hands can stay clean, and then that minuscule bit of peer pressure has kind of resulted in him blowing up the space elevator. I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe this is character growth, because he didn't kill anybody. He was just destroying
because
architecture.
Kim said that there were like thousands of civilian workers on the space elevator that would be killed if he blew it up. That was that was Kim's argument against blowing it up. And Jax was like, you have to make sacrifices, you have to make tough choices, and killing a few people to save everyone is a pretty fair trade. And then like the next thing we know, Val just blows up a bunch of people.
In that case, that line missed me, passed me by. In that case, I would say no, he shouldn't have probably done this. Jax was the grunt, he was kind of the figurehead, and that's probably how the balance should have stayed. She's now free to kind of wander around doing her own Lone Ranger missions.
And again, do you think that they should have handed Jax over to Zod?
It would have solved a lot of issues, and that was my very first, even at the beginning of the episode, I presume they're going to make this right by handing Jax over. The only reason I'm glad they didn't is because I like the character. It would have been instant death, probably on TV for all to see. I like the character, you know, and that's my selfish way of saying I'm glad they didn't, but for the story they probably should have done.
Yeah, I felt the same way, that for the story and for the characters that they needed to hand Jax over. And I feel like Val has very quickly fallen down a slippery slope without much prodding and provocation. I mean, I know he made that speech where he was like, Jax has the tactical mind and the experience and all of these things, and I don't, and I'm going to do my best as a leader, but I'm not the best leader for the job. I kind of wondered if his insecurity about becoming the new leader of the Resistance is what led him to kind of capitulate towards Jax so easily, but at the same time, he has a very strong moral code, and I don't think his moral code could have allowed him to kill innocent civilians like that.
There is now kind of no morally good side. They've both committed atrocities, if that was the case, and hundreds of people died as a result of that space elevator, which I always laugh at the name of that, being destroyed.
I mean, I feel like, as opposed to Swamp Thing, Krypton, in the last few episodes, they sort of gained back the momentum that they'd lost earlier, and it's still feeling like quite a dynamic thing. Nyssa and Seg are now working together. They've got Korvax back.
I think the show's benefited hugely from, I think we had the Wegthor, in this is like episodes 1, 2 and 3-ish. We had the Wegthor story, the Kandor story, Seg and Adam Strange on the home planet of Brainiac, and we had the kind of Nyssa floating around between all of them. So there were kind of 4 stories that have been whittled down to 2. So I do like the new balance they've struck. It's still not, you know, the best thing on TV. I do really like what Brainiac has done for the character of Seg. I think he's actually like a 3-dimensional character now. He's obviously got this inner turmoil, and he'll have this alone time, these conversations with himself. And occasionally he'll shout, "Shut up!" you know, to Brainiac, and everyone like, "What's going on?" So I like that, but yeah, it's okay. It's alright.
Yeah, I do like the fact that he finally admitted to Nyssa that Brainiac is still inside him.
Which seems crazy. Normally people will take these things on and on and on. They'll get worse and worse and worse. And then finally it'll come out.
I really hate that trope. Yeah. It's just like, things would be so much easier if you just told somebody.
Yeah, it's
just
the Oliver
one
Queen
person.
trope, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, wait till like the 20th episode to finally reveal something, yeah.
Yeah, so I was glad that they didn't do that, and he did kind of reveal his situation to her, and that she was kind of like, okay, it's a little bit weird, but we'll deal with it.
What do you make of Brainiac kind of offering Seg these deals? You know, as their lander was about to crash, he gave Seg the knowledge to save the 3 lives, and now that they've landed, he's saying, I can help you beat Zod if you'll let me. I will imbue you with the powers to defeat General Zod, which was ominous but also sounded quite cool. And now he's saying, take me to my ship, set me off, and I give you my word that I will not, you know, come off the candle. So what do you make of these dealings?
I think that Brainiac is kind of the proverbial devil on Seg's
It was
shoulder.
literally exactly what I was thinking.
He's basically out for himself. He's trying to survive, essentially, and he's very good at manipulating people, and Seg is not an overly complex guy. He's got very kind of basic motivations, very easy to sort of manipulate him. Brainiac is basically telling him whatever Seg needs to hear to give Brainiac what he wants. And, I mean, the things he's offering, how could Seg say no? You know, like, if he turned down Brainiac's help in the flyer thing, they all would have died. If he doesn't get his help with Zod, do they really stand a chance of defeating Zod, you know, the greatest military mind Krypton has ever seen? I think it's a very dangerous road for Seg to go down. And I have this idea that Corvex is actually going to turn into Jor-El, and that Brainiac is going to take Seg over, and that's kind of going to be the end of him and the kind of renewal of Brainiac as a living entity. That's sort of where I see it going.
I like that they didn't walk back the light of death.
Yeah, I totally expected them to, but I like that, you know, she's just dead.
She seems dead. She seems literally
I do
dead.
wonder where Zod is going to come from now.
Yeah, good point. What did you make of Zod, the final scene? He's had his people develop this amazing gun, and he's out in the like Arctic tundra or something looking for Doomsday, and he goes into this cave and he basically sees Doomsday there at the end. I've been looking forward for a lot of this season for like a big confrontation between two of the big three. This could be amazing. This could be great television next week, considering Doomsday looked better than his DCEU version.
Yeah.
That could be amazing. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of wraps up everything we have to say about Krypton.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not as bad as it has been, but it's still
struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a perfect show. They definitely have room for improvement, but it is getting better. This week, we tried out the animated series Final Space. What was your initial reactions to it?
For somebody that didn't particularly like this, I've written a hell of a lot of notes about it. Basically, it's nothing special, and I like it fractionally more than Disenchantment. I've created a handy guide for everybody for Netflix animation, going from worst to best. Okay, so Disenchantment. Is it Disenchanted?
I think it's Disenchanted.
Disenchanted is the worst. Final Space I like fractionally more. The thing about Disenchanted is it has no redeeming qualities, I would say. It's as if Matt Groening has learned nothing over the last 30 years. It's still the old jokes, still most of the same voice actors. It's just very kind of boring by today's standards. Final Space, we've only seen the first 2 episodes, but I believe it could be better. Like, I see potential for growth. I quite like the main character, but everything else is just a bit blah. Next, F is for Family, which I find quite funny. It's not a perfect show by any means. Set in the 70s, it's like a Simpsons set in the 70s, but they all swear and they're all terrible people. There are no kind of Lisa Simpsons to kind of elevate the family up. You'll see like animated scenes of people having sex and stuff like that. It's that kind of humour. And at the top, BoJack Horseman, which is one of the greatest visual portrayals of mental health issues I've ever seen. I think it's incredibly informative, incredibly helpful, aesthetically beautiful, and it has like Hollywood A-listers for like every role. Like J.K. Simmons is in it for like one scene, Angelica Houston's in it for like one scene. It's insane how they've been able to do that. But anyway, back to Final Space. This is very much propping up the list. I didn't really like anything about it. It's just really dull, and it's set in space, and there are infinite possibilities for something set in space. It looks pretty good. I didn't really like the humour, didn't really like the storyline. The main character is one of those, he's like a Sterling Archer, like an absolute moron, and yet somehow everything works out for him. The general story, it's like a kind of group of people in space find each other and they create a crew. I assume like Farscape, I assume like Firefly, that kind of thing. It looks like there's going to be some time travel involved. We had like a little bit at the end of episode 2, which was probably the most intriguing part of all of it. Yeah, one to avoid.
I definitely would agree with that. I found it quite boring, and considering the episodes are only about 20 minutes long, when you're like counting the minutes to when they end, that's not a good sign for something so short.
Like I think you said a few weeks ago, I can't remember what the show, what's the show? You said it was something you would veg out to. I think that was your expression. This is something that I would maybe play a game while having on in the background. It didn't.
It's not something that you have to really pay attention to. It's just kind of background noise. Yeah. Maybe like you have some people over and put a couple episodes on, and if the conversation lulls, people can tune into it or not. Yeah, it's nothing particularly special or amazing.
Yeah, I've highlighted just the bits that I thought maybe not necessarily funny but kind of interesting. He's like locked in this prison in space. I don't know. He's accompanied by a deep space.
Although I just say the concept for the prison of like locking somebody in isolation on a space station with a really annoying robot as their like sanity companion.
Yeah, deep space insanity avoidance bot, which I thought was such a great concept. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, a really, really good idea. I like Mooncake. His little kind of, I think it was a cross between a Jigglypuff, a Rotom, and a Drifloon. That's my hybrid. That's what it is, and coloured green. And we find out that it's planet destroying. I feel like we've had that in Futurama. I think the little cute little cuddly thing that was a weapon, basically. It's the exact same principle as that. There was like a cat bounty hunter, not a cat, they look like a cat called Avocado. I like that Hugh, the AI of this prison space station thing, sounded just like Hal. Like that dead, eerie kind of, you know it's up to something. And when it told the joke, and it goes, timing is everything, Gary. That was like the one moment I laughed. Hal is one of the most evil, brilliant creations of all in all filmdom, and so to have something like that I thought was a good idea. David Tennant's the bad guy. Yeah, when he wore the skin of a dead Hublot or Hublot, that was quite a good gag. Honestly, it's just not really worth your time. I can't stress that enough. We're in a great age of animation right now on TV. This really isn't up to scratch, I would say. So there are other animated things out there, specifically on Netflix as well. So just push past this, and unless you want something in the background to just play PlayStation 2 or read 2 or I don't know, but just not worth your time.
So that's kind of thumbs down from both of us. I don't think we'll be continuing on with this.
Any redeeming qualities you can think of?
I like Mooncake and Avocado, and I like that it's Kato with a T instead of a D. And his kid is
Avocado.
His kid is little Kato. But I like cute things and I like cats, so those characters are going to win for me. Otherwise, it was really bland. Really bland. Really disappointing, because I mean, it's a good premise. I mean, as you said, there's limitless possibilities for things you can do in space. The idea of the prison was a really good concept. It just, everything fell flat.
Like I said, I believe this could get better. I see buds and seeds of potential here, but I'm not going to stick around to find out if it pans out.
And so to finish up this week, we watched the second season of Dark, which was just released a few weeks ago on Netflix.
I found out there's going to be a third and final season next year, which I think is great. They're not
extending it.
Yeah, which is a great idea.
Yeah, because this season felt like a very natural continuation of the previous season. You know, they brought in some new concepts. They ended with a nice twist.
Is this, are we doing spoiler or non-spoiler, just so we know, because...
I don't know.
Maybe kind of non-spoiler.
Let's do a non-spoiler.
Yeah, that's what I think, because these shows do not come around that often. They really don't. Like you said...
I mean, it's a very special show.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really appreciate is the way they've cast the various people in the parts. Like, they have done such a good job of matching up, like, facial features and things like that. Like, you look at the older versions, and you can genuinely believe that, like, there's several of the actors that I actually had to look up to make sure it wasn't the younger actor in makeup, and it's not. For each of the different time periods, there's a different actor for each character, and I mean, they do really, really well at even like facial tics and body movements. It's probably the best matchup of different people playing the same person that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and this is a show where sometimes it can be, specifically maybe in the first season, when you're not quite used to the concept, it can be a little difficult to know who's who sometimes with the time jumps. And so that really helps, actually, because half the time you kind of think, oh, the really tall, kind of Caucasian guy is probably the Inspector, the younger version of the Inspector in 1953 or whenever. Yeah. That really helps. I think the biggest compliment I can give this show is that I would say it feels like 18 episodes of one season. It might sound like a peculiar thing to say, but sometimes when you go from season 1 to season 2, particularly with child actors, they can have aged, they can look completely different, the tone can be completely wrong, you know, it's got maybe more money, it's maybe got less money, and so that it feels a bit disjointed. But from episode 1 to episode 18, it feels smooth. Everything is exactly the same, tonally, aesthetically, and it's just a real joy to watch.
One of the things I wondered is if they've done a thing where they just filmed it all together.
Quite possibly,
then broke it up into seasons and episodes, because as you said, there is a really strong sense of continuity. The child actors in particular don't seem to have aged very much. we didn't get a lot of the 1986 storyline this time. It was mostly focused on Jonas and his kind of quest, but it felt very much just like a continuation. Like season 1 had 20-some episodes, and I'm presuming and hoping that season 3 will be, again, very similar, where they just expand the concepts a little bit more, but it still feels like a natural continuation of what we've had so far.
What did you make of the idea? Because it's not an issue I have with the show, but everybody was time travelling. Everybody was going in those caves. It was almost like there was a revolving door at those caves at one point. I mean, what did you make of that? Was there a little too much, maybe? Or do you think it was just the right amount? Obviously, it was happening in different time frames, but, I mean, in those 2 episodes...
Yeah, I think, like, everybody has a time travelling card
bumping
at this point.
into each other in the doorway.
I enjoyed everything kind of coming together, and people finally sharing their knowledge and kind of holding each other accountable for that. I mean, like, we've compared this to Stranger Things before, and I think in terms of a television show, just for entertainment purposes, if you have more than one group doing the same thing but not communicating with each other, you end up in a Swamp Thing situation where everybody's having the same conversation. And there were a couple episodes where everybody was having, or there was an episode where everybody was having the same conversation, but it happened very quickly. It was very briefly dealt with. Like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Swamp Thing, you know, they sort of skipped over the actual retelling, and it was just like, there's something I need to show you something, and then the next scene we presume the person has been filled in on all the time traveling bits.
It's rare in a TV show where everyone will know, and everybody will be indulging in the time travel. Normally there's like a very specific few, and they might try and tell someone who just won't believe them. We're at the point where all of Wyndon almost knows. It's an open secret. Sometimes people try to say, hey, I'm time traveling, like they won't believe you. Even with proof, like they won't believe, but they're adults. Says, okay, well, where's the proof? Oh, this picture of Ulrich from 1953. Okay, yeah, like they're buying into it, which is just so different. This show is different in many ways.
It is. It's a very unique experience, and I think I love everything about it. Like the opening sequence to, you know, the individual characters is very evocative of a particular mood, which the weather plays into quite a bit. This season we had a lot of sunlight, which I found an interesting switch from last season, which was almost entirely done in rain. And then I think at one point when we hit a period around the events of season 1, the rain came back again. So it was kind of a way of placing different time periods, and I mean, in a way you can even look at it as sort of representing the people's awareness. You know, that last season nobody was communicating with each other. Everybody was a few people were sort of figuring out about time travel. You know, Ulrich went back, Mikkel went back, and Jonas, but that was kind of our primary time travelers, those 3. And there were a lot of secrets, whereas in this season a lot of the secrets are coming out, a lot of information is being shared, and there's a lot more clarity going on, which is sort of reflected in the prevalence of sunlight and lack of rain. So I'll be interested to see what sort of aesthetic season 3 has, because we're going into kind of a completely new concept as well. And I think it will be a really sort of nice rounding out of the whole kind of time travel motif and mythos that they've built in this series.
Any moments that we can talk about without kind of spoiling it? I'm interested to see where Katerina ends up after that final episode. But also, and this takes second place. It was close. It was a close battle. Second place behind the moment in Shazam involving the mother. The moment where Hannah speaks to Ulrich. That was one of the most kind of disturbing scenes of television I've seen in a long time. When you think about the scale of it, and when you think what Ulrich's probably gone through, just incredibly disturbing. She is a monster.
She really is. Ugh. And there is kind of that moment where Jonas realizes that his mother is a monster, and that's a bit heartbreaking as well. But yeah, I mean, she was just absolutely brutal with Ulrich.
I think it's possible that Ulrich was maybe one of my favourite characters from the first season.
Really?
Yeah, obviously he's a terrible individual. I wasn't like rooting for him at any point. When I was watching season 2, I had 2 sort of observations. The show was slightly worse off. It's a great ensemble piece. Everybody's strong. I think it was slightly worse off for not having more Ulrich. I also think it was slightly worse off because the focus felt slightly more aimed towards the kids in season 1, whereas in season 2 it felt slightly more aimed towards the adults, I would say. So those are, they're not even complaints at all, but that's just 2 observations I have. It's a really strong cast.
It really is.
Isn't it? You know, like you said, in all the different time periods as well.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it, like, right now. Definitely recommend it if you love time travel.
In German, with English subtitles.
In German with English subtitles. Do not do the dubbing, it's not good. I could really go on about how amazing this show is forever. I'm really excited that there's going to be a 3rd season. You know, it's kind of a mixed thing, you know. I think it's a good decision that they're only going to have 1 more season. It will, like, finish it on a high note. great. The story is told. They understand their limitations and what they're going for. The downside, I really love this world, and I would love to have endless numbers of seasons of it.
Is it like a catch-22 situation?
Yeah.
You know, because this fourth season could have been just terrible. We watched Stranger Things not 3 weeks ago, and we said season 1 it felt so strong and so kind of fresh, not necessarily new, but it is maybe a fresh take on things. By season 3 we're being told the exact same story again, so hopefully the creators will think, okay, we've done a real hit here, and they'll create something else with similar kind of sci-fi elements. The Office, we wanted a season 3 of that. The English Office could have been terrible. So sometimes it's so difficult to say goodbye, but there are so many shows where you just wish they'd said goodbye earlier. I mean, Arrowverse, I mean, it'll be tough, but something else will come along, and maybe even by the same creators, you never know. So I'm good with it, and I just hope maybe they did film season 1 and 2 together. Let's hope they haven't read into their own kind of success and they're changing it and trying to do anything weird. Just stick with your original vision and give us your truth, and that's hopefully what we get next summer. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I guess this was your call to bring us into the show, and you've done very well. I think I've enjoyed both seasons. And if anybody...
And how many shows can you say that for? How many shows are out there that have consistent quality over their first and second seasons? I mean, so many times you have like a strong first season, and then they kind of, like you said, get caught up in their success and decide to do like a much flashier, more expensive version in season 2, and it doesn't feel right. Yeah. And here they've just stayed true to their vision.
It's a weird thing to compare it to, but I find it sometimes with bands, when you get the first album comes out, and they won't have any money, and it'll feel a bit grotty, you know, like it'll feel like it was recorded in somebody's basement, you know. And then when they find fame, all that is taken out of the next album, and it will sound so pure and so crisp, but it will have lost something, you know. Yeah. It needs to maintain the vision and the feel, and it must be difficult, you know, when Netflix might flash 100 million in front of you. It's like it's nothing, and say, we'd quite like you to turn season 3 to season 3 and 4, because this is doing really good numbers. They may have even done that with the is it the Duffer Brothers for Stranger Things? I think it's the Duffer Brothers. They may have done that. It may have been one season, suddenly it's 2, suddenly it's 3, suddenly it's 4, you know?
I mean, like, how do you say no to that? If we were in a position, like, for Otherwhere, for example, we'd only planned one season, and we did our one season, and it was great, and everybody was happy with it, and somebody came along and was like, hey, you know what? We're going to give you some money if you do a second season. I mean, I would be
it's
like...
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough.
Yeah. I would like have to seriously think, because my impulse would be like, yeah, sure, like, pay me to play in my world. But yeah, you do have to think about, like, is there more story to tell?
Yeah. So a complete hit, success.
Cannot recommend this show enough.
Yeah, and if you've got any kind of sci-fi leanings, please watch this. If you like foreign language things, watch this. If you like Scandi Noir, watch this. Time travel, watch this twice.
Just, you know, your regular drama. You know, this season we have kind of the threat of the apocalypse, except it's not like it's kind of a very, very real world thing. There's meant to be an accident at the nuclear power plant that sets off an apocalypse. You know, last season we had the kind of mystery of the missing children. So yeah, there's a lot going into this. So I mean, if you're kind of averse to sci-fi, give it a chance, because
it could be a really good gateway drug to sci-fi.
It really could.
It's kind of like it's got a lot of traditional drama tropes and a traditional drama style, and yet it just squeezes in the first season these kind of elements that you may not be used to. Season 2 it kind of doubles down on them. There is a lot more of it.
And I would say that, like, rather than the focus being on the sci-fi elements of the show, it uses the sci-fi elements to pose very philosophical questions about fate and choice and predestination and free will, and whether or not we have any of those things, or if it's all just random and we're kind of spinning our wheels in place, which I find really interesting. I love it when television shows pose questions like that and leave you with something to think about and ponder.
I very crudely called it a thinker last week, and that's what it is. It will make you'll go away from it, and you'll be pondering. You'll be thinking, okay, something maybe I haven't considered before. Again, not spoilers, but there is one kind of item in season 2 that makes me think of the Apple of Eden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole new thing that's going to happen in season 3, which I really like. steampunky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steampunky.
We like it so much, we're just like going off on one now about how much we like it, but we should probably wrap up at this point.
Yeah, I think it's about time we wrap it up.
So yeah, once again, Richard Cardenas, thank you for your patronage, really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy your t-shirt. We can be found on Patreon, patreon.com/geeknerd.
And we actually have some brand new rewards benefits for our $20 patrons. We've teamed up with a fantastic artist who's doing embroidered coasters for us.
They're too nice to be coasters, aren't they?
They
just
are.
hang
Like,
on when you got down
I have one, and I don't like. I used it for a coaster for about 5 minutes, and I was just like, no. It's got a little space.
Yeah. So hello to Jasmine if you're listening to this. We think your artwork's great, and we hope this is a collaboration that lasts a long time. All the pictures of her samples can be found on our pinned tweet on Twitter at the moment.
They're also on our Patreon page as well.
Fantastic.
There's a post up there.
We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/thegeekly, Twitter @geeknerdpod, and we have a shiny new website created by this guy.
Hi.
Audio medium, I shouldn't really do that. Created by Leks, geeknerdpod.com. You can find out about us, this project, other projects we're doing in the future, and we're going to get a nice little mosaic of all people wearing our t-shirts as they find their way into the world. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. See you next week.